This is Marketing Jam, a show featuring the brightest minds in marketing.
Brought to you by Canada Post. Head to canadapost.ca/insight podcast for ideas to add value to your marketing.
Welcome to the next episode of Marketing Jam. I'm really excited because we have Courtney Lawrence, who has a really long job title from Lululemon, which is exciting. And it's great because Lululemon was born and birthed here in my backyard here in Vancouver, BC. But previous to that, not many people know this, but the creator of it had a brand called West Beach, which was awesome. And all through my junior high and high school years, I wore West Beach clothes. And then, of course, he went on to create some little yoga clothing thing that I guess is around the world now.
Some little, yeah. I don't think I knew that actually.
West Beach clothing. It was like three surfers all lined up, and it was like the cool. If you had it was the cool sweatshirt to wear. He always Chip. I explained like he always feels like he's got a pulse on what's coming next.
Yes.
Like it's like almost the gift of the prophetic. He can see what's coming down the pipes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and he's immersed in the culture, so.
Yeah.
Which is what I can speak to.
Yeah. And speaking about you, how did you end up where you are today? What's your origin story?
Mm-hmm. What is my origin? I have always been interested in human behavior, human culture, and why people do things that they do.
And your full job title, just so people know?
My full job title is Strategic Insights and Foresight at Lululemon.
Wow.
So
that is a cool job title.
It is a very cool job title. It requires a bit of explaining, but essentially I oversee the enterprise-wide insights and foresight for the business. Mm-hmm. So supporting in how we can achieve our company goals through understanding our customer, the market, and culture.
Okay. And what would you, for the difference between foresight and insight, how would you describe those from what you do?
Insight is essentially what are people doing today? Yep. What are the needs right now? And how can we look at behavior and culture from a lens of what's going on in the world right now? Mm-hmm. Foresight is what projections can we make? What scenarios are possible in the future? And so bringing those together, we can kind of extrapolate what we think is going to happen by understanding today and these fringe signals of what could happen 5-10 years from now.
Wow, that's really cool. So you basically, you have one finger on the pulse and the other hand on a, what's that, the glass ball that tells you the future.
That's right.
Is that kind of your job?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So an example would be, if we're just broadly speaking, talking about mental health, today, what do we know about how people are coping, or what are the ways that they're finding ways to deal with cognitive training, et cetera. And then in 10 years' time, why do we think, that is going to be extremely important based on different forces that are happening politically, culturally, economically, and with technology and the rapid rate of change, what is mental health going to look like in that time? So how do we then create a plan to get there and continue to be relevant?
And that's amazing. And they give you the ability to do that working at a clothing brand, which is what Lululemon primarily is. And you'll sell accessories and other stuff. But being there, you're able to actually have an impact on everyday life. Okay.
Yeah, and I would say, we are so well known for our product, our apparel, and we do stand for a much more holistic lifestyle and experience. And anyone who goes to our stores knows that we try and create like a real sense of community and offer things beyond, just the amazing product that we have.
Yeah. So from a brief mental health kind of look, I had a shirt, a workout shirt from Lululemon, long sleeve, kind of dark green, gray, brownish type of shirt. And I still have it actually. I still wear it. It's great. And when I flip up the bottom of my shirt, there is actually like positive encouragement along the bottom of the shirt.
Right.
Is that part of the intention to like encourage people, help them with mental health while they wear clothes that can speak to them?
Yeah, I don't know if that was intentionally related to mental health per se, but it's I think we call them sort of these love notes.
Yeah.
Sort of features of surprise and delight. Okay. So some people notice them, some people don't, but it's a nice little feature that adds a bit of character to the clothing. Absolutely.
And how did you end up in the role you're in now? Because that's such a wild job you have, like to have, you're both a doctor and you're a genius. You're someone who's having to see the future, right?
A visionary. Yeah. Well, I as I was saying, so I've always been interested in human behavior, human culture. Personally speaking, I grew up with a sister with special needs.
Yeah, okay.
So I was very interested in health, the healthcare system, psychology, why people do things the way they do things. At the same time, I love traveling. So then when I was in university, I realized that there was this field called anthropology that studied human culture, behavior, rituals, like just how people work together. So I studied anthropology. I did a master's in visual anthropology, which is about material, visual environment. And then
Dan Brown, what's his character name from?
From
Angels and Demons.
Angels and
Is
Demons.
that his? That's not what he does.
I
right?
don't think. No, I think he's more archaeologist.
A symbolologist.
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
but there's lots of different fields. There's like forensic
Yeah.
or anthropology, archaeology. So then I found, at the time that I was doing that, design thinking was really taking off. Applied anthropology was becoming a thing where businesses and organizations were hiring social science researchers to help them better understand their customers or their clients or the markets that they were in. So after university, I started working in Toronto. I got hooked up with the innovation kind of industry there. Worked for a couple different firms, innovation consulting, design, etc., and led a lot of insights projects. So helping clients across many different industries understand, why their consumers were not gravitating towards a campaign, or how we could redesign a certain product experience. So I did that, and then one of my last clients was Lululemon, and I guess the rest is history. I was offered a position to start first in the white space innovation team at Lululemon. So I was there. I've been there for the last almost 3 years, and then recently transitioned to the more strategy side of things.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
For those that are listening and watching, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point, and I think a lot of people have read that. Would you call that's a good kind of dipping your toe into the work that you do when he kind of analyzes the humanity and how they interact with brands and how brands go viral? Or would that be almost a different kind of science to what you do?
I would say that's not the science or the social science of anthropology necessarily, but it is, there's so many connected fields these days.
It's more humanities, would you say, what he does? Or more?
Well, there's like the fields of behavioral economics, for example, predictably irrational or a lot of those books that talk about why people make the decisions that they make. I think another really blossoming field is the field of neuroscience and neuromarketing. And so they all kind of work together. Anthropology at its core is really about understanding context. So when you have a product or a service and you're putting it in the hands of a consumer, you're not distilling or isolating that one interaction from the rest of their life. So, I had heard this example recently where a yogurt brand was trying to launch their yogurt in Japan. And they asked a few typical marketing questions of, do you consume dairy in Japan? Do you have yogurt? And this is the very quick version of this story. And so they launched essentially the same product that they had in North America. And it flopped completely. And it flopped because while the culture was one where they actually ate dairy, they didn't take they didn't realize the context through which people were eating dairy. So it was actually on their commute. They wouldn't sit down. They eat with chopsticks, they don't eat with spoons. So they often had dairy in more liquid form through straws. So they'd be drinking it on the go, and so the whole ritual around eating and food was different. So anthropology is really trying to understand the environment, the culture, and the context, more so than just how is someone going to interact with this service, product, or experience.
Because you could be a Vancouver, Winnipeg, or Toronto-based product that does really well, and you kind
That's
of
right.
blow up regionally.
That's right.
But Winnipeg, no one really realized. But Winnipeg has really long winters, right? And just that certain shoes wouldn't work there in the winter. The summers are different, and every city is different.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, when I was in consulting, I did a project for a big CPG beauty company, and they had launched a campaign in Quebec. And again, the campaign had flopped. It had done really well in Eastern and the rest of Canada. And they didn't know why. So instead of just asking, what do you like or not like about this campaign, what's resonating, we did a more ethnographic cultural study and understood that the mentality of this particular segment was that based on history of the church being extremely materialistic, there was a negative perception of being too ostentatious. So the ad, which was kind of Hollywood glam, just did not resonate whatsoever because of that historical, cultural, deep-seated resentment towards the church. So, I think there's so much richness in being able to study consumer, and I try not to even use the word consumer because it's people, it's humans who live in a context and make decisions about how they're going to interact with brands. But you have to understand the history, the environment, the political forces, the social forces, all of that.
Wow. That's incredible because we had another guest on the show, David Allison, wrote a book called Value Graphics, where he was arguing that it's not about their millennial or their age, because he says so many companies get stuck that way because a millennial in Vancouver is going to be different than a millennial in Cape Town.
That's right.
And his argument is it's about the values they have, but what you're saying is not just their values, it's what shows they got brought up with, the culture they live in.
It's all the conditioning around it, and the values are a consequence of that.
And a piece
often,
of it.
a piece of that. So I agree. It's very much, it's less about the demographics and more about the psychographics, the culture, the like the overarching values of a community or a group that has a set of practices and rituals together.
So when you see a workshop or a webinar or conference as like how to reach millennials, do you kind of
eye roll?
Do you throw up a bit in your mouth, or you just eye roll and you're like?
Well, I think there's definitely value and importance, and there are I believe these sort of sweeping statements that can be applied to a generation because that the generation, regardless of which market, may have faced these universal forces like. A huge recession or a war or something that could influence. So there's definitely, value in looking at those demographics. I just say like let's slice it down into what's the particular subgroup that we're looking at.
Yeah, and for whatever brand you work for or whatever brands you're representing, and the way you can apply this is, hey, think more deeply, think more holistically.
Right.
Start to break out, kind of almost unpack the onion to who the people are that you're trying to reach with your product, your brand, your message.
Right, exactly. A 24-year-old growing up downtown Mexico City in a working family is very different from a 24-year-old brought up in, I don't know, Regina on a farm. You have to really understand the surroundings of your target.
Wow. And in turn, you can not only then help these people better, communicate to them better, but then the side benefit of you can sell things to them better, right? Market to them better.
Yeah, you can understand what they're looking for. You can understand their needs in a deeper way, and create a sense of like authenticity. Like you actually understand them, and you ultimately are trying to serve whatever needs that they have.
And so people that want to go deeper into this and learn more, is there any like websites or podcasts or books that you recommend?
There's a lot of books these days around applied anthropology, consumer anthropology, ethnography in business. I actually have a link that I just got the other day. It has like the 10 books to read, which I can maybe share afterwards. That'd be great.
We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, you can put it in the notes. So there's a bunch of books. I actually, I don't really read that many books as much as I am constantly just reading articles and actually I don't do Reddit, but there's a lot of like even just the New York Times or
The Economist.
Like there's great pieces out there. Even just on social media, like seeing what's being posted, that's all indicative of the culture and what's coming. So I'm listening, and then obviously for Lululemon in the health and wellness space, on all the different blogs, and I'd say it's like just finger on the pulse of what's bubbling up, and trying to identify when they're starting to become patterns of noise or signals. Yeah.
And maybe what are some trends that you're seeing, whether it's people accepting this role in the brand and accepting this sort of research, or maybe trends that you're seeing that are coming down that more brands are actually implementing what you've been learning?
I wouldn't say it's a trend, because I think it's been growing for ever since I've been in consulting, but just, human-centered design, human-centered marketing, design thinking, all of the practices that really put the human first. And that's really what I stand for, is like, if you really want to understand and know how they feel and how they think, but also how they feel, then you can't just do that in a focus group or a usability lab or a survey. Yeah, you have to spend time with people, just like we're sitting down and talking right now. Like, it's a conversation. And so I see more and more brands investing in that type of insight work internally, building out teams that do that, hiring ethnographers or anthropologists. So that is definitely been growing. And now I'm seeing much more in the last few years, the implementation of neuroscience, cognitive sciences, behavioral science, behavioral economics, just to round that out.
Are you a Android or iPhone user?
I'm an iPhone user.
Okay, and so someone in your role, what are the apps that you're like on the daily, like you're going in there and you're kind of like consuming, or maybe you're putting content into?
For my work?
Or both?
Or just in general?
Both, yeah.
I definitely say Instagram.
Okay, yeah.
Is mostly what I'm looking at. I'm looking at Apple News a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of a neat app. I like it.
Yeah, it just kind of puts the highlights up there. Beyond that, LinkedIn is another place where I get interesting articles. But otherwise, there's certain databases and things that I'm looking at more for my work than apps specifically.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And as far as someone who wants to get into the role you're doing now, someone's maybe a student or they're in a position they want to shift into what you're doing, what are some recommendations you can give them?
Be curious, first recommendation. I don't want to say there's a path to where I am right now. I would just say be curious about human behavior, motivations, and in whatever way you can learn about that, whether it's taking a course in human-centered research, anthropology, design thinking, and really questioning, in marketing, questioning the methods and the ways we go about trying to understand a, quote, consumer. And, thinking about putting them as people and humans first. And the other thing I would say is just getting curious, like in casual conversation and talking to people. Like, I don't have to go and create a research project to be gathering information. I'm gathering information all the time when I go work out, so it's that curiosity, constant curiosity about what's happening in the world. And I'd say even for my role, while I'm reading these articles and sites, we have like trend sites that we belong to, etc. I'm also learning from different people around me. I've been studying sort of Indigenous studies with 2 teachers for a while, so that keeps me, culturally aware. Watching the news, like other ways, just engaging in community is a way to,
Do you think curiosity, like someone who is innately curious, do you think that can be nurtured? Is that like are they born with it, or is it something they can like make happen in their life?
It's funny because one of the first firms that I worked at was called Curiosity Inc.
Cool, that's awesome.
And my boss and manager at the time, who's a good friend, and she is obsessed, like her thing is curiosity. And I remember doing some research on curiosity and seeing, like, is it nature, nurture? I absolutely think it can be nurtured. I think I was actually speaking last night. I've been doing Toastmasters.
Nice.
Which is really, really fun. And last night I did a talk on imagination as medicine, as healing.
So cool.
And I gave this story. I was on a plane on the weekend where I was on my laptop for a few hours doing work in the plane. And then I looked in front of me, and there was a little boy sitting in the seat in front of me. And he was looking out the window. He's probably 7 years old, looking out the window. He was like so in awe of what he's like, clouds, water,
So cool.
mountains. And I was like, closed my laptop right away, looked out the window, and was like, yeah, it's beautiful. Like, I take for granted, I'm in a plane all the time. I take it for granted. And so just reminding myself and remembering that you can be curious about anything.
Yeah. So maybe be like a child.
Yeah, be that childlike wonder, curiosity. See, I mean, I have to, or one as a researcher has to be curious every time, because I can be studying yoga. Yeah. I've been, I've taught yoga. I know all about yoga, but each time I study it, I need to come with like a beginner mindset that I'm not the expert. There's something I'm going to learn. Yeah. Any topic, if you're working in a CPG company, if you're working in automotive and you know that industry really well, there's always room to learn more if you're curious.
So maybe bring a kid to work day?
Bring a kid to work and see what questions they ask.
That's a cool idea. If you just to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm not a parent, but whenever I see kids, I'm like, you're asking really smart questions, because you're asking, in some cases it's like the obvious question, but the obvious question doesn't always give the obvious answer. Yeah.
And I'll even sometimes on the opposite end, I'll bring someone who's like 65 plus into our world, and they also ask really good questions, because some of the stuff we're doing is new.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I talk to my mom about some of the things I'm doing, and then I have to roll my eyes because she doesn't understand or is questioning, but then I realize like it's really great because I have to really explain or understand the questions that she's having, where she's coming from.
Yeah. So I've shared this before, but on the show, but the term genius, like we see genius bars at Apple, and we know some geniuses and previous geniuses. The term comes from, the origin of the term comes from, from the genie. It's people who could hear from the genie, which again, Aladdin just, movies come out and the genie that comes out, it's a figure, right? Like a kind of a spiritual figure. Yeah. And so they found people who could hear from the genie were geniuses. So we've now made it out to be people who are just really, really smart and can fix your Apple computer. But I'm curious, in your line of work, how often do you ever meet a genie, like from the genie type of person who could just see something, hear something, and just go for it? Because I've seen this with some brands before. Yeah. Whereas some people who are just like really just smart and they've done their research and they just clinically know that that's the right product to take to market. Because I feel like both can be right, and I've seen both be really successful, but I'm just curious, how often do you see those two worlds, or have those worlds collided?
I love that. I didn't know that was the etymology or the origin of the word.
Yeah, so now when you go to Apple, you can be like...
Yeah, I'll be like, oh...
Are you listening to a genie right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting because my take on that is this genie or this spiritual figure or force is really, I am a spiritual person. I believe like I can get dreams or visions that I actually listen to. And it's really, in some ways it's, it can be your intuition, or people can feel things, see things, and it's the people who act on them, I think, that we would call the geniuses. So I know there's a handful of people at Lululemon who others would say are like sort of visionary, because they are seeing or sensing things.
Visions.
Visions, or there's like an element of creativity and not boxing it into what has been taught or rationally what makes sense. But yes, in 10 years or yes, in 5 years, this is what we should be doing, even though there's no kind of immediate rationale behind that. But yeah, so I would say there definitely are people like that, and the thing is they have the courage to listen to those messages rather than having to feel like they need to defend it or put it aside, discount.
Because we've also probably met people who are visionaries and geniuses, but I've heard them say, "Oh, I thought of that idea 5 years ago. I thought of that last year."
Right. Yeah, like a moment of clarity or a moment of
you got a download, right?
A download from the universe or from a source or whatever you want to call it. But in my mind, it's the spirit, like it's a connection to a greater spirit that can give you these amazingly creative ideas. And it's just the courage to take them forward into the world and convince and tell people why they why we need to make them happen.
And maybe even sometimes they go against insight and foresight.
Right.
But maybe sometimes they align with it perfectly.
Right.
And so maybe save room for that, but also at the same time, how do we keep our finger on the pulse?
Right.
Well,
True.
Does the world need more scrunchies? Does it need more headbands? Or which way, what are head trends going towards, right? Do we keep putting hoods on jackets, right? Things like that, which is fascinating that you get to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And listening and hearing that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to share with listeners and viewers on the show today?
I would just reinforce again in marketing, in the work that we do, just to keep remembering to put the person first. You can look at sales numbers, revenue targets, 5-year goals, all of that. And at the end of the day, a huge portion of the success of those comes down to how much we can empathize and understand and talk to people as humans, and not just targets or statistics or whatnot. So be curious, immerse yourself in the community, in culture, watch for those kids on the plane who can teach you something, and just ask a lot of questions.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for being
thank
on
you.
the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, hopefully you can nurture your childlike wonder. This was a really inspiring and insightful conversation. We're going to have notes in there for other books and resources that you can check out. But thank you so much for joining us here on the Marketing Jam, and we'll see you next time.